I'm about to cover constructs, which includes the different scopes of a variable, the two different types of subprogram, and the two different types of parameter. So 6 things to learn, and you should know the terms local, global, procedure, function, formal, and actual by the end of it. You shouldn't just know them, you should be able to identify them, should I say. So let's start off with variables. I've broken this up into sections. So there are 2 different scopes to a variable. They can be global or they can be local. Global means it can be accessed anywhere in the program at all, whereas local means they're restricted to their own little subprogram. That's the def blah 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 colon, that little bit, those little subprograms. That's what I mean when I say subprogram. So here's an example. So global variables are here. We've got some numbers at the top. Number 1 equals 5, number 2 equals 10. They're not in a little def, but this is. So this means total's technically a local variable because it's inside something, whereas this can be accessed by any part of the program. You could do something with the numbers here, or you can make additional subprograms, and they can use these numbers as well, which sounds great. But if you were to start changing these numbers, that is when problems start to happen. So it's good to, you don't always want to rely on global variables. This one has, this program is more modular, which means it can be moved about without causing errors, basically. And it's more modular because everything is in a subprogram. This number 1 and number 2 can only be accessed within this little subprogram. There's no room for mistakes to be made. Both of these programs will print out the number 15. To be honest, this program is so small, there's not really an issue. This just helps avoid issues later on. I've written a slide about it, I can't remember this. So yeah, basically just what I was saying. So the same name of a local variable can be used in different parts of the program with no issue. I forgot to mention that. So if you want to use num1, num2, you can make another one called multiply numbers and just use num1, num2, and these can be 2 different numbers there, and it won't make a difference. There's no danger of variables getting mixed up, of things changing that you don't want. And the keyword is modular. That is like such a great exam word to use, to say like what is the benefit of local variables. That is a question you could be asked, and you could say that using local variables over global variables makes your program more modular. And like, yeah, as I've said, you haven't got the hint by now, it's better to use local variables. So wait, here's the multiple times bit. God, I can't remember I made this before. So number 1 and number 2 are different numbers here, but they're different numbers from each other, and this won't affect the other programs, right? They're completely independent from each other. Whereas this is going to be a bit of a problem, right? This is going to print out 15, which is fine if you want that. But say you want this number 10 here for some reason, and you meant this total. Well, now the name total is shared in 2 different places, because when you return total to here, you're going to overwrite this number 10. If for some reason you wanted to keep this the same, then that's going to cause a problem, right? The example I always refer back to is once upon a time when I was in university, and I wrote the pi, so 3.14 at the top. Any 3D calculation you need to like any 3D movement you need to multiply it by pi, basically. And at some point in the program I changed it to 0 by mistake, and I thought I was using the global version of pi up at the top, but I wasn't. And then it took me days to find out that error. So yeah, using global variables isn't recommended. Speaking from experience, it can cause problems. It's not always going to cause you a problem, but when it does, it can be hard to find out what they were. Now for subprogram classification, right? So those little subprograms, there's two types: procedures and functions. Procedures run the code, and that's it. Normally you use this for, like, if you're in a coursework, it'll be like a display function, and functions return the code to be used later. So coursework is probably, nearly every subprogram will probably be a function, and then there'll be one procedure at the end. That's the usual structure, and the procedure is just to display the data. Better to look at examples. So here's a procedure. It does some stuff, it prints it out. That's it. That's just looks like a regular bit of code, but that is a procedure, right? You can't use this value total or num1 or num2 later on, because they're stored locally and it doesn't return them. So if you were to try and print total here rather than here, it can't see total. It's using it as local. Now we want to use it as local. We've just discussed that that is better, but if you wanted to use total later on in the program, you'd have to return it. So this can be fixed, however, using a function instead. So let's say we put in you write return total here. Now you can print total at the bottom. You can pass total to other subprograms. You can do a million different things with it, because now it has went from being a local variable and you're making a global copy of it here, and you're returning it. Usually, I've kept this simple for now, you would want to do different names when you return it. So you'd want to call that, I don't know, tot or whatever. But I've just kept it simple for now, right? But that's what a function is. Last section is parameters. Again, two different types of parameters: formal and actual. And as I was just saying, it's a good habit to use different names with actual and formal parameters. So the formal parameters of this program is this little bit here. This is an it's got no parameters, right? But this one has two parameters, and when you're setting it up to expect something, it is considered a formal parameter. When you are using it down in your main program, it is considered an actual parameter. And so I was pointing to the wrong bit there. It was this bit here. These technically aren't parameters. They're global variables, but a parameter is anything in brackets, right? So there's only two times you put variables in brackets, and that is when it's when you put them in your defined subprograms, whether they're a function or a procedure. So this one's a procedure because it doesn't return anything. And so if it's in this bracket, it's considered formal, and if it's in this bracket, it's considered actual. The way I think about it, it's a bit stupid, but it helps me remember it, is that this tells you what to expect. It's expecting values to be given to it, right? If you don't tell it what to expect, the program's going to break. If you were to go to a dinner party, a really fancy dinner party, there would be invites to tell you what guests to expect, and that would be a very formal event because you know everyone who's coming, and it's overall just a formal event. So we are telling the program expect something called num1 and num2 here, and then the actual parameters, well, I don't have an easy way to remember that. I just remember it's the other one. Lastly, remember to rename them. So you should be using slightly different names. You don't have to use new formal parameters every time. You can just use, if you're in another subprogram, you can use num1 and num2 again, and that's okay. But you should be using different names up here for formal parameters and different ones down here for actual parameters. And then you can see it here. So we've got num1, num2, it's returned as number 1, number 2, and number 1 and number 2 is passed here. Stays the same, but then it is changed back to num1 and num2. This is just the cheat sheet slide, really. There's not much to say. This is your function, it returns something. This is your procedure, it doesn't return something. This is your formal parameter, this is your actual parameter. these are your local variables, so are these, and then these are your global ones because they can be seen by the whole program. And that's it really. Right, thank you for listening.